Happy President's Day. I'm working, you're not. I'm not mad about it. President John Quincy Adams once said, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you're a leader. Since the days of George Washington, American presidents have led Americans into doing great things. Washington mobilized his men at Valley Forge to defeat the British. Abraham Lincoln stood on the blood-soaked grounds of Gettysburg, where he inspired Americans to look at the Civil War not as a political struggle, but as a fight for human freedom. FDR's fireside chats inspired the nation during the Depression and the Second World War. JFK inspired the country to go to the moon.
Why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Those presidents were all the main characters of their time. But in today's times, we have Joe Biden.
He's just an uninspiring candidate. Like, there's nothing about, Joe Biden that makes you want to listen to him. He should be leaning on people who are more inspiring than him, who are more charismatic than him, and he should just be, I guess, if you want to call it, the brains of the operation behind the scenes. Like, that sounds crazy that we're saying that about a president of the United States of America, but he has no main character energy at all.
Joe Biden's never had main character energy. He spent his career plagiarizing from the main characters. And my liberal family members visited me this weekend, and they are wetting the bed. Why can't Joe Biden just go out and sell his accomplishments? Why can't Joe Biden say, this is what Trump did, this is what I did, and this is what I'll do in the future? I held my tongue, but they'll learn. Joe Biden isn't capable of these things. Main characters know how to campaign. Their instincts drive them to lead. Joe Biden's told how to campaign, and now Democrats are considering telling him not to. Listen to the New York Times.
He is not up for this. He is not the campaigner he was even 5 years ago. A campaign has certain assets, but the most desirable asset is the candidate. And the Biden campaign does not treat Biden like he's a desirable asset. Step one, unfortunately, is convincing Biden that he should not run again. I think Biden, as painful as this is, should find his way to stepping down as a hero. That the party should help him find his way to that, to being the thing that he said he would be in 2020, the bridge to the next generation of Democrats.
Now, the cries for Biden to step down have never been louder. Nate Silver, the Democrats' polling wizard, said if Biden doesn't improve, he's going to lose. Now, all Nate Silver does all day is stare at polling numbers. And he says Biden's doomed if he doesn't turn it around. But Joe's up against Father Time. He can't improve. He falls asleep at funerals. He shakes hands with ghosts. And that's easy mode. The coalition's cracking. And the squad's now saying, don't vote for Joe in the primary.
It is also important to create a voting bloc, something that is a bullhorn to say enough is enough. We don't want a country that supports wars and bombs and destruction. Right now, we feel completely neglected and just unseen by our government. If you want us to be louder, then come here and vote uncommitted.
Ooh, uncommitted. Talib better be careful. The FBI is going to find gold bars in her closet. But life's too expensive to put up with Biden's incompetence.
My credit score's 800. I'll be 25 in 2 weeks. Yet my car insurance in the last 2 years went from 220 to 270, now to 320. I give them a call. They said, sir, there's nothing we can do. We're getting calls. Our phones are off the hook. I'm paying nearly $900 a month for a Nissan Rogue Sport. Do you not? I'm paying $1,000 a month to not look masculine at all.
Lyndon Johnson, who had his credibility shot during Vietnam and saw the writing on the wall as a younger and more inspiring candidate, RFK was eyeing the White House. He chose country over ego and announced he wouldn't run for re-election. But Biden's the most stubborn man in Washington. He proposed to Jill 5 times before she said yes. Now, if I were a Democrat, I'd be worried too. Biden hasn't shown me anything. He's even complaining about the New York Times. A Democrat president is complaining that the New York Times is mean. The publisher, Sulzberger, said today, quote, he's a historically unpopular incumbent and the oldest man to ever hold this office. We've reported on both of those realities extensively, and the White House has been extremely upset about it. Now, the last Democrat to complain about the New York Times' unfair coverage was Hillary, and we know what happened there. And here she is again, stuck on repeat, warning voters that Trump and Putin are buddies.
He wants to be a dictator on day one. He wants to round up people because of the way they look. You know, they may or may not be undocumented. It doesn't matter to him. He wants to call out the army to do that. He wants to use, you know, the Insurrection Act to militarize American law enforcement. He has a whole team of right-wing thinkers, so to speak, who are coming up with an agenda called Project 2025. He wants to rid the government of any kind of independent expertise. He wants to bend the government of the United States to his will, just like Vladimir Putin did to Russia.
Hillary fell for the dictator on day one hoax and says Trump's going to round up people and put them in camps like FDR. And are we really doing the Russia thing again?
You can't keep saying that there's a threat to democracy and democracy as we know it is going to be gone, but not act like it. And the other problem is they've always done this with every single Republican candidate. Since I've been alive, whoever the Republican presidential candidate has been, they've demonized. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's John McCain. It doesn't matter if it was, you know, Mitt Romney. It doesn't matter who it is. They will demonize the Republican candidate. And now that there's an actual legitimate threat right there in our faces, they're like the party who cried wolf. Nobody believes them.
Last time Charlemagne said that, Joe Biden told him, "You ain't black." Not the most inspiring Biden slogan, and we know it's his because he didn't plagiarize it. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.